The Indianapolis Colts have gotten a lot of people worried the past couple weeks because, in case you guys have not heard, they really struggled in a scrimmage against the Cincinnati Bengals and haven't looked that incredible in the preseason thus far. But in today's video, I want to give you guys a couple reasons why we really should not be worried and why I'm personally not worried one bit about this Colts team. So in case you guys actually haven't heard what happened with the Indianapolis Colts, I'll give you guys some brief details. If you guys want to know more about the story, I suggest Googling it or looking up further reports on it through YouTube. But the basic crunch of what happened is the Indianapolis Colts had a scrimmage against the Bengals, really struggled in it, played like absolute dog shit, then had a preseason matchup against them and did not play good. And as I said, they haven't really played good at all this preseason. But in today's video, as I mentioned, I want to give you guys 3 reasons why you should not be worried one bit. And real quick, before we hop into the video, around 90% of you guys who watch my content are not subscribed. So if you guys go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the like button while you're down there as well. But let's hop into the video. So as I mentioned, I have 3 reasons. Let's start off with reason number 1. Anthony Richardson is extremely young and still developing. And if there's really any point that you guys can take away in this video, it's just give Anthony Richardson some time. I know that's become kind of like a trope you use to defend a young quarterback who's still developing. Hell, we did that with Zach Wilson for so many years and it just never worked out. But I think this is one of those times we can actually use this trope and actually kind of be a little bit effective with it. Because realistically speaking, how many games Anthony Richardson actually played, both in college and in the NFL? Like 12, 13 games in the regular season at least. And yeah, he's had some preseason games as well thrown in there, but it's not like he's playing the entirety of those preseason games. No, he's playing like maybe 1 or 2 drives per game. So this is a quarterback who has potential, but needs to still develop it in live action situations. As I said, he's maybe played like 12 live action situational games that actually mean something to him. And because this is a young quarterback, I think that we have to allow him at least some more time to develop in those live action scenarios. I know that we want to see immediate success right away, and I know we've seen that before with guys like Herbert and Dak Prescott and so many other great quarterbacks. But we've also seen quarterbacks who didn't really play all that well early on. Look at a guy like Josh Allen, who I think is the perfect example of this. Josh Allen was horrible in his rookie year, and he was slightly better in his second year, and then he turned into the guy in his 3rd and 4th and 5th year. And I think realistically speaking, we could potentially see something like that with Anthony Richardson this year. And in my opinion, I think last year he was pretty darn good. It just so happened that he had a big time injury, which could potentially be a slightly other reason why he's been struggling thus far, because it was a shoulder injury that's going to take time for him to get used to, but that's kind of besides the point here. But I do think realistically speaking, we can expect Anthony Richardson to play at least on the same level he did last year, if not at a slightly higher level. This is in some ways technically his rookie season in all things considered, because last year he only played like 3.5 games. So this year he's going to hopefully get a full year's workload of work in active live game situations against active NFL starters. That's going to give him a ton of experience to work with. In that scrimmage against the Cincinnati Bengals, which by the way, I did not watch live. I don't know the exact details of what actually happened. I'm just reading the reports and just reporting on it. But that's a Bengals defense that has been in the league for quite some time. That's a more experienced unit with the same coaching staff that's been working with them the past couple years. So I think having one bad scrimmage against a really good defense in which they've been playing for a long time together and the offense hasn't been playing for much time together really shouldn't be all that much worthy of panicking over. Yes, I know it hasn't been pretty, but at the end of the day, you just gotta be willing to give this young quarterback some time. He's young, still developing, and still growing, and they were drafted for a reason. He was such a sought-after recruit coming out of high school and such a sought-after draftee in last year's draft because of how much talent and potential he actually has. It hasn't even fully developed within him yet. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent about Anthony Richardson. Let's now go into my second reason, which has a little bit more to do with Anthony Richardson and his situation, which is going to be you have to believe in Shane Steichen. I know it's hard to sometimes believe in head coaches because a lot of head coaches give you a lot of malarkey half the time. They'll just give you typical PR answers. They're not going to go into too much detail about what's actually going on. But I do think if there was one coach that we should at least listen to, it would be Shane Steichen. In my opinion, he has turned himself into one of the best offensive minds out there in the NFL. His RPO, play action heavy style offenses just match so perfectly with what the Colts want to do and with what Anthony Richardson's potential strengths can be. Let's not forget that Shane Steichen was the same offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts back in 2022 when they made that championship run. And if you look at Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts, you can honestly see a lot of similarities between those two quarterbacks. Hell, they kind of look and are built pretty similar to one another. They're both big, athletic, strong-armed quarterbacks that aren't really the best with their eyes. These are not quarterbacks that are going to sit in the pocket and pick you apart with their vision like a Tom Brady would or a Joe Montana. That's really not who they are. They're somebody who's more than likely going to need a good system around them, and they're going to be able to make plays surrounding that because they're freak athletes and really good quarterbacks. So I think for Shane Steichen, he handpicked Anthony Richardson for a reason. He handpicked that guy knowing he was going to have to develop him. I think we have to have a little bit of patience with those two as they continue to build their chemistry that is still very, very new. At the end of the day, I love Shane Steichen, I love Anthony Richardson, and I think all Colts fans should come together to sort of blanket these two guys with defense because it's been really early on in their careers, and people are for some reason all of a sudden attacking this team, in my opinion, for really no reason. In my opinion, it's too early to tell. Give these guys some time. Let's talk about reasoning number 3. And this one might be a bit of a hot take here, but scrimmages, preseason, training camp really does not matter. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Metro, it doesn't matter at all. It does matter. It just doesn't really matter to the extent that you guys think it does. To me, preseason, training camp, OTAs, all that stuff is cool and all, but it's really more about installing game plans, teaching the playbook, making sure you line up correctly, and just executing at a fairly high level. The big thing that you want to see from these camps and training camps is you want to see those guys who are on the bubble really make a bunch of big plays to make the team and make the 53-man roster. In my opinion, that's kind of the whole point of the preseason. We don't watch the preseason to see our starting quarterback go out there and, play the entirety of the first half. That's kind of something that you don't see a whole bunch of. And in the case of this Colts team, sure, they may have had a bad scrimmage or a bad practice and a bad preseason thus far, but it really doesn't matter all that much because about 50% of the guys that you're watching out there aren't going to be on the active roster, and about 50% of those guys are either going to be on different teams next year, free agency next year, or practice squads next year. For me, I don't even really care about what I see from the starters. I just want to see them line up properly, run the plays properly, and just don't force too many turnovers. And based off everything that I've been hearing, it hasn't really been the turnovers that have been the issue. It's just been not having good protection and not playing at a high enough level, which in my opinion can be ironed out because I think the talent on this team is good enough to play at a high level. It just hasn't popped out quite yet because they're still developing and still growing. Again, scrimmages are cool and they're important, but in my opinion, it's not the end of the world if you have a bad scrimmage all of a sudden. And if you have a bad camp in general, I can think of so many different players that have had great camps and didn't even make the 53-man roster. And I can also think of several stars who had terrible camps, but then went out in the regular season and played fantastic. A good example of this was back in 2022, Dak Prescott had a really poor year where he threw a bunch of interceptions. They still managed to go 12-5, but for Dak Prescott, it was a lot of interceptions that year. And then in that year's training camp and practices and scrimmages, he was throwing interceptions left and right all over the field. And what did he do in the regular season? He threw 9 interceptions in a 17-game span. So for him, it didn't really matter. It doesn't really matter to the starters about how they perform. Just gotta stay healthy, and you gotta put yourself in a position to understand the playbook and put yourself in a spot to play at the highest level come game day. And I think another thing we have to realize is these players are also human beings. They make mistakes. They're going to make some bad plays. They're going to have some turnovers. They're going to have some bad blocking opportunities. It's not going to be perfect. They're human beings. So just because you had one bad scrimmage doesn't mean you should be panicking about them at all. The discourse surrounding this Colts team the entire offseason has been very positive. It's been very high on Anthony Richardson. It's been very high on Shane Steichen. And then all of a sudden, we've had some bad reports about them struggling in the preseason and struggling them in camp. And it's like the world has gotten on fire for the Colts, which in my opinion is completely ridiculous. This is a Colts team that has way too much talent to be bad next year. They're going to be a good team, regardless of what they've done in camp and regardless of what you may have seen this preseason. They're going to be a good team. So as I've mentioned throughout the entirety of the offseason, I have a lot of faith in this Colts team. I think they are one of the most talented teams in the entire NFL. Yes, they're not a perfect roster, hence why I don't think they're going to be a championship contender in 2024. But because I believe in Anthony, because I believe in Shane Steichen, and because a lot of people should believe in this roster, I think this team is going to have an awesome 2024 season that could potentially make them get to the playoffs. So just because they had one bad scrimmage against the Cincinnati Bengals and they haven't really impressed that much in the preseason does not mean that we should be panicking about them at all for this upcoming season. Give them time, let them develop, and heck, if by week 10 this team is absolute trash, then yeah, let's start panicking. But until then, let's not panic at all. Give this team time. Believe in the development of Anthony, Shane Steichen, and this whole team's chemistry. And I'll see you guys in week 5 regarding this Colts team. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. And if you guys agreed or disagreed with anything that I say, let me know in the comment section below. And per usual, if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.